All right, everybody, welcome back. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'd like to first and foremost thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate it. And check out my website, danceofthecosmos.com. Again, my name is Dan Hendricks. In this video, we are going to be talking about confluence. Confluence is a very important idea and concept to understand when it comes to studying astrology. Confluence means seeing multiple influences that show the same or similar event or theme occurring in somebody's chart. And because what confluence does for us as astrologers is it's a verification method to see whether that area of life or that timing period, or that the connection between those two things in their life are really strong events and themes that are going to be happening and taking place, because we're seeing it happen from multiple different perspectives. Confluence is, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is when we're looking at birth charts, and especially when people are asking us questions about their charts, that we take the time to look at things from as many different perspectives as possible. Because what I've noticed with astrology is that not any one technique will ever tell you everything there is to know. It's going to tell you there's a limitation, I think, to every technique. And I think not every single technique is 100% applicable to the event because of this confluence. Because in astrology, for example, we have for a man's chart, for a male's chart, Venus is said to be the spouse. Well, for anybody's chart, the seventh house represents the spouse, and for whichever ascendant that is, a different planet, depending upon what the ascendant is going to rule that seventh house. And so you'll have to look at Venus, you'll look at the seventh house, and you'll look at that seventh lord, right? And then if you want to take it even further, you can get into Gemini's Charakaras, which are the movable Karakas, which you could look at the Darakaraka, which is another thing that represents spouse or partner. And so since we have so many different ways to look at a relationship, we have to look at each one of those individual factors. And that's how we get confluence. If we see all of those factors showing something positive, so it's like, oh, you're going to have a very high, noble, dignified spouse, or your spouse is going to be very kind of like a higher character or quality, or a stronger person. Well, also you might see in the seventh house is the second lord, right? And then you have the Darakaraka and Venus in the second house. So now we have confluence of second house with seventh house. So maybe your spouse is the type of person who's very responsible. Second house is that of our responsibilities. Or maybe your wife is your spouse is involved with your family a lot, and is very much in your circle of friends. So that's how we can start to see confluence, because we see all these different factors involving seventh house and spouse all pointing at the same thing. So that's why confluence is so important, because if we're only supposed to look at one thing, if we're only supposed to have one technique, why are there so many techniques in astrology? Why are there so many different karakas for each event, right? Why do we have the house lord and the karaka and the darakaraka that indicated? And then what do we have? Well, goodness gracious, we have 16 different vargas to look at. There's even more than that, but if you're following Parashara astrology, there's 16 vargas which are divisional charts based off of the planets and the house positions in the birth chart, there's 16 different divisional charts. And each one of those divisional charts is like zooming in on a certain aspect of life. It's almost like it's going into a house and opening that even more. So it's like, so you have the 7th house and all those factors. Well, then you also have the 7th divisional chart, the Saptamsha chart. And then you want to look at everything in there. You want to look at the 1st house, the 1st lord, the Dharmakaraka, and Venus, because it's going to be just as important to look at it in there. So this is why Confluence is so important. Why would there be so many different factors to look at if we weren't supposed to use so many different techniques of analysis? And then at the same time, the other part of astrology is the timing aspect of astrology. And when it comes to that, again, there's so many different dashas to look at, and I always recommend looking at more than one dasha for anything that you're looking at. And because what we want to see is multiple influences showing the same thing. And what are we going to have most of the time? Most of the time, we're going to get a mixed bag of influence. Some techniques are going to show that, oh yeah, that looks like that doesn't, that looks like that's not indicated. And this is why techniques fail. Because if we're sitting here trying to use one technique to analyze one area of life and we go through 100 charts, what you will find out if you're just using that one technique, you'll go, it only works, 60 to 80% of the time. No one technique ever works 100% of the time because there's so many different ways to look at these things. So maybe that one technique is the only technique that's showing good, and that's why that technique fails. Maybe when you looked at a chart, you used one technique and you're like, wow, this technique always works, but it only worked on, it worked on 5 charts. But then maybe the next 10 charts are going to be charts where that one technique shows yes, but then there's 5 other techniques show absolutely not. So confluence, confluence, confluence. Find multiple factors stacking up in charts. I cannot stress this enough. It is so, so, so helpful as an astrologer, as we develop our little astrological toolbox, to dig into that toolbox, get those tools and put them to work, and let them be. Let it be like, okay, that technique says no. Let's move on to the next technique. That technique says no. That technique says no. Well, then the answer is no. And but anyhow, thank you for watching this video and taking the time out of your busy day. And I very much appreciate it. And namaste.